Hello and welcome to another video from fantasyfootballscout.co.uk. We are here to discuss some captaincy options for Gameweek 37. I'm joined by Neale ahead of the penultimate game week of the season, but still plenty to play for. Big games coming up and an interesting discussion this week. Obviously, we've got Manchester City at home, we've got Liverpool away, titles on the line. Big games for both of these two teams. So I think a lot of people are going to be split between these two teams, perhaps. And Neale, just initially between those two particular games, is there any one that you particularly favour yourself?
I'd have to do a bit more research into it. Hopefully, this video will help not just everybody else out there, but me come to a decision as well. I think when I set my team up on a Saturday or a Friday after the deadline has just passed, I just make a knee-jerk decision on who I'm going to captain. So I've got on Aguero right now. And we'll come to his pros and cons later, but I think the fact that he's we've mentioned his stat this morning in our Scout Squad article that he's returned in every single home game he started this season, and that was a tempting stat to persuade me initially. But we'll do more research into it, and I think I'm siding with City at the moment. I think given Newcastle's record for suffocating the Big Six and all that. But how about yourself? Are you leaning towards anyone in particular?
Well, I don't have any Man City players as of yet. Anyone who was listening to the Scoutcast on Tuesday night knows that's my big outstanding problem right now. And I like Aguero. I like Sterling as well. I think basically my transfers are going to be heavily based around getting in a Manchester City player because I do think their fixture is the better fixture, which is why we're going to start with them for now. Crucially, I think the difference really here, we'll come straight back to you on this one, Neale, in terms of why I think this is the better fixture, and I think why you think this is a better fixture as well, is the opponent. Because, as you mentioned, Newcastle quite good at stifling teams, especially in home matches. What can you tell us about Leicester? I'm imagining them away from home, not quite as capable as Newcastle would be in front of their own fans.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because Leicester are one of the form teams in the division. So I think just looking at it in terms of a tricky fixture, you'd think Newcastle's the easier of the two. Just based on league standings, current form and stuff like that. But yeah, we delve a little deeper. Leicester, since Rodgers took charge, I think it was game week 29. It was away at Watford, and they haven't kept an away clean sheet since then. So that's 4 away games, and they haven't managed to record any shutouts. They haven't really played many teams of note. So in that run of 4 away games, West Ham, Huddersfield, Burnley, and Watford, so not like top 6 teams. Now they are. I saw the Arsenal game last weekend, and they were excellent, like well deserving of a win. Even before Maitland-Niles was sent off, they were much the better team. Didn't really give Arsenal much to sniff at really in terms of goal scoring chances. Even before they were reduced to 10 men. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you would back Man City on home soil against pretty much everybody. We've seen what they did to Arsenal and Chelsea in the last couple of months. I do think this is the game Liverpool fans will be holding out hope for, isn't it? Really, because Man City will almost certainly beat Brighton in the last game of the season. And I think they might be able to breach City's backline, which have been excellent this year. So I think 11 clean sheets, isn't it, in the last 15? Whether they can keep them out the other end, which is what we're really concentrating on, I suppose, because our main captaincy contenders are Sterling and Aguero this week from City. So since Rodgers took charge, this is game week 29. 8 goals conceded in 8 games. That's not too bad. About a goal a game. Probably worryingly for those considering Sterling and Aguero, only 2 teams, and it's Liverpool and Man City themselves, who are, they've regularly been towards the top end of the defensive stats tables. So only those 2 clubs, the title chasing pair, have conceded fewer big chances and fewer shots in the box than Leicester since Rodgers was appointed. So they've got this image of quite a swashbuckling, attacking team, Leicester. But they're doing all right in terms of keeping out the other end. Yes, not many clean sheets within that. But the underlying stats suggest they're fairly solid at the back. And within that run of games, they've also had a bit of unrest at the back. So Maguire and Evans were missing 1 week, for example. Maguire through paternity leave, and Evans was nursing a minor knock. So they've had Morgan come in and Soyuncu as well. And yeah, last weekend they look quite good in terms of keeping Arsenal away from the business end of the pitch. Yes, they had a man advantage for about an hour, but I don't think it's a good a fixture on paper as it perhaps looks. The flip side of that is that Leicester will show more attack ambition than, for example, Newcastle will against Liverpool. You'd expect,
Yeah.
which would perhaps play into Man City's hands. So we've seen in Game Week 35 and 36, City struggling really to get into the groove. We saw Burnley just camp outside their own box. They did play with Barnes and Wood, but it was basically 8 men behind the ball and Barnes and Wood just chasing around up top. Man United again, that Man United game, packed 5 at the back. Even Spurs did that as well in the league game, the first match of double Game Week 35. So does Rodgers know how to set a team up like that?
I think that's probably what it comes down to, right? Is maybe that's not his style.
Yeah, but he did show a bit of acumen last weekend. He brought in Hamza Chowdhury, who's a bit more of a defensive midfielder, to play alongside Ndidi and Tielemans. And I would expect him to continue, or perhaps bring Mendy in as well to bolster that central midfield. So I think he's obviously got a plan how to deal with City, the bigger teams. It's just whether or not he can curb the attacking instincts of those players like Maddison and Vardy and Barnes and people like that. Ironically, this is quite a good game for Vardy, you'd think, wouldn't you? Because Leicester's going to be behind the ball and then forced to counter-attack. But I don't think there'll be many people handing the armband to him this week. But yeah, so sort of mixed messages really in terms of Leicester. Decent attacking team, so you'd think there'd be a space to exploit, but the underlying stats suggest they're actually a better defensive team than we thought.
Yeah, I mean that certainly will be off-putting to some people, I imagine. And obviously in the last sort of 4 game weeks, as you say, Man City haven't quite looked at their devastating best, and the Burnley game kind of laboured to the result that they got, which obviously is still good for their title aspirations, but of course for fantasy managers it's not really what we're after. And I mean, so with Aguero, I mean he hasn't scored a goal at home, for example, since February, which just feels mad because I mean I think it was like the last day of February, so it's a bit of a conflated stat, but and he has returned in game since then. But in terms of the goal threat that he was offering a couple of months ago, he is a bit removed from what we see now, especially in the last 4. But at home, it has been a little bit better. So what we've got on the screen right now is just all players sorted by their attacking stats over the last 4 game weeks. And there's reasons to be excited about both Sterling and Aguero, because if we're thinking about form versus fixture, it's perhaps not quite form because neither of these players are in Vardy-like form, but are still posting statistical form, if that makes sense. And Sterling is joint top out of all players in the whole league for shots on target in the last 4 home matches, and he's level with Vardy and Salah, who obviously aren't at home this week. So in terms of fit and active, because Kane's in there as well. So if you're looking for fit and active players over the last 4 home matches who are definitely playing at home, game week 37, Sterling is top of the pile for that, and it's an incredible level of accuracy as well, because he's had 11 shots, which is is a bit lower than Salah's 25 and Vardy's 17, but for 8 of those to be on target, I think that's an accuracy of 72%. And that seems to be what Sterling does at home, is be the type of player on the end of very easy chances, and it's harder to miss than to score, although he is still capable of a clanger, as we saw fairly recently. But he tends to follow up those misses with more attacking returns. Then Aguero is a little bit behind in accuracy. He's got 6 shots on target from 14, which is around 42%. But again, that might actually arguably be more sustainable, because somewhere between 40 and 50% accuracy seems to be what someone will post over the course of a season. No one's really going to be posting 72% accuracy over a whole season. So, there's that for Aguero. If you look at expected goals as well, Aguero's ahead there. And he's got a better minutes per chance and minutes per chance created than Sterling as well, because there will be people that will be sort of torn between these 2 players. What we can tell you is in the last 4 home matches, Aguero and Sterling definitely up there among the more dangerous players. But there's not much to separate them in terms of the fact that Aguero's having more shots, Sterling's more accurate. They're creating roughly the same number of chances. So Aguero's created 6 and Sterling's created 5 in those 4 home matches. To me, that suggests, and Andy I think mentioned it on the Scoutcast on Tuesday night, if you've got a striker and a midfield player kind of looking like they're very close and it's hard to really separate them, then probably going for the midfielder might actually be of greater use, because the goals are worth more to him. He's got, obviously he'll get a clean sheet point if Man City keep a clean sheet. Aguero won't. All that sort of thing comes into it. You could argue that maybe Aguero is more likely to have his minutes managed, not because of other competitions, but more just because he hasn't really looked at his 100% fit best fitness best that we expect from him. I think I mean personally, I'm edging towards Sterling, and as I sort of already mentioned, is largely connected with what I can actually do with my squad. But if I had them both, I think I probably would lean towards him. But of course, Aguero's top of the captain poll right now. People will love reliability, and as you mentioned, he has had attacking returns in every home game he's started this year. And when you compare Aguero versus Sterling, so a lot of people had said that Sterling was the one who was more likely to outscore Aguero in matches they started together this season, and he is still ahead in that. So if you look at just the whole season, they've started 10 home matches together this season. Sterling outscoring Aguero 6 times to Aguero's 4, but since game week 21, Aguero's done that 3 times and Sterling's done it twice. So the pendulum has sort of swung back towards Aguero, and there will be a lot of people out there who will remember him scoring 4 goals in this exact fixture last year in a heavy win for Man City. So while that sort of thing, history that a player has against the club doesn't always come into things. If you're tied between these two players, then maybe Aguero, you edge towards him. So it's a difficult discussion if you've got both players, because there's so much for and against each one. It maybe just comes down to perhaps ownership in mini leagues, what you're looking to do for your overall rank, having a look at how they compare in the top 10k, that sort of thing. If you had to pick between those two based on all those factors, Neale, I mean, is it a coin toss, or have you got one that you perhaps prefer?
Well, as you said there, it kind of depends on your squad structure, doesn't it? I mean, I own Aguero, I don't own Sterling. I am considering bringing him in for this week. I'm not entirely sure how I'd do that. Probably would mean sacrificing one of my Liverpool players, or maybe even Son, which I'm not really keen to do. But yeah, what you just said there about Andy going with the midfielder when there's a 50-50 call. Now, Aguero and Sterling both got exactly the same number of attacking returns this season, 31. Roughly the same number of bonus points. I think it's 25 to 26. So all that's separating them really is the position. So the extra point you get for the goal, the extra point you get for a clean sheet if you're a midfielder. So that's all there is between them really in terms of FPL returns. As you say, it's Sterling's. He's kind of, I wouldn't say hit and miss. It's you either get everything from Sterling or little. So he's blanked 13 times this season. But look at the double-digit holds within that. If he does score, then he's going to score big. So he's had like returns of 14, 21, 16, 18, another 21. So yeah, I can understand why people would lean towards him rather than Aguero. I think just Aguero's consistency would probably swing it marginally for me. But then again, I am biased in the fact that I own Aguero and I don't own Sterling. So I think I'm leaning towards Aguero. Partly because, well, for example, we don't know where Sterling's going to play. And I was looking at Leicester's chance concessions and where they're conceding from. So no team, since Rodgers was appointed, no team has allowed fewer chances to be created from their right flank. So if he's on the left, Sterling, then if he's on the left, and then he's up against statistically quite a superior defensive unit. So yeah, it's tricky. You can look at all these stats and prove any points you want to death, really, can't you, with these underlying stats? But
yeah, that's true.
Ultimately, I think this week it is just a coin toss, isn't it? Really, that we don't know. We don't know who's going to explode against Leicester. Neither of them might. It's just following your gut, and as you say, there's extenuating circumstances. If you're in a mini league, if you're trying to block somebody off, or if you're trying to preserve a rank or something like that, then they'll all factor into your thinking. I suppose we're almost at a point where we were last Friday and we were talking about Mane and Salah. But yeah, I'd love to offer you a definitive answer, but unfortunately I can't. I think people are just going to have to follow their gut on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is just going to come down to personal preference, and perhaps we've reeled off so many different stats, and I know that lots of people have different opinions of different types of stats, ones they see as more important as others, and there's a wide range of opinions about what's more important and what isn't. So maybe that's what's going to decide it for people. Let's look at Liverpool now then, because I think if you had to pick a Liverpool player, I think there is only really one we could look at. Because the fixture is away, that often has sort of been, Salah's largely been a bit more reliable away from home than Mane has. Let's talk a little bit about Newcastle's defence first. Do you think that they're the type of team in their current situation, obviously safe now, that can concede enough goals to make captaining a player in this match worthwhile, considering Man City are at home?
I think they will concede. I think they have got this reputation. I've watched them plenty of times this season with them being my team. They can make life difficult for the big six, but they've conceded in every game so far. Against, I think they've had 11 fixtures against the big six, so they've shipped in every one of them. They've only won one. That was against Man City, which was a complete freak result, really. Now, I think you were saying about Salah, and I can understand that with his recent track record on the road, and he's Mane is more of a home bird, isn't he? But Newcastle's susceptible in the air and at set play. So we saw last weekend against Brighton, and Newcastle were in second gear. They were just going through the motions. I expect them to be up for it a bit more this weekend. But Brighton had 9 efforts on goal. 7 of them were headers, including the goal, Pascal Gross's equaliser. So Sadio Mane is generally better in the air. In fact, I think this season he's the leading FPL midfielder for headed attempts on goal. So I am probably, if I had to choose between the two, I think I might even side towards Mane's case. Possibly because I think Newcastle will sit back and defend, and I don't think that's a game for Salah, really. There's not be spaces for him to exploit. They might have to rely on crosses into the box from the likes of Alexander-Arnold and Robertson. And I think in that situation, I think Mane could possibly shine in that situation. But yeah, again, that's just my interpretation of it. Newcastle are, statistically a decent defensive team. 10 clean sheets already this season. Not one of them against a big six side, it should be said. But in terms of, shots on target, I think they are 7th best this season. Big chances conceded, lower half of the table, but improvement of late. Shots in the box, 6th worst across the season, but again, slight improvement of late. I just think, I think Newcastle are one of those teams that will make life difficult, but they are limited themselves, and I think they will be breached. Just I can't see them conceding a lot of goals, which Liverpool haven't been scoring much away from home anyway. I think Newcastle, the 8 of the 11 games Newcastle's played against the big six this season have been settled by the odd goal. So like a 2-1, or I think there was a 3-2 Man United as well. But generally speaking, that 2-1 defeat seems to be the trademark now of Newcastle's performances. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the score again on Saturday night. So yeah, I think I see what you're saying about Salah and about Newcastle being the tougher fixture. I think there won't be a score like there was against Huddersfield.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think there will be goals. And you've got to look at the Benitez factor. I know he's a pro, and I know he wouldn't roll over for Liverpool and that, but he loves the club. He loves the city. His family stays there, and that's all. Would he really go all out to try and, dent a title bid? I wonder, but
a few Lascelles' own goals in the last 5 minutes just to tick them over. Right?
Yeah. I mean, Newcastle haven't got anything to play for, and I think that showed last week against Brighton to an extent. But they might be dented by. They've already got Almiron out, and Perez is a doubt with a hip injury as well. So if they haven't got those two players, then maybe a Liverpool defender's the way to go again. We saw how well Robertson did last week, and if they're without Perez and Almiron, and they're playing with Atsu and Kennedy, who were pretty poor against Brighton, then they've a clean sheet in the bank, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and I suppose that might even just sort of back up the point about how defensively minded Newcastle will be if they don't have those players that they can rely on in counter-attacking moments. then that probably just kind of solidifies the idea that they're going to be very tight and very compact. Because, as you say, Kennedy and Atsu are really not the same, not outlets on the same level as the two injured players. Just a few stats on Salah. We should point out that he does look like he's in very good form away from home. He's got more shots on target just of any player in the last 4 matches in isolation. He's second for total shots, but this is just where we should point out that 8 of his 19 shots in the last 4 matches were against Huddersfield. And it can be easy to sort of sometimes get sucked in by a big 19-point haul in a home game against a poor team, captain them then for a harder away match and it not come through. Then just looking away from home again, Salah is still largely the most threatening player away from home. Last 4 away matches, 9 shots on target from 13 shots, 10 in the box. That's a nice high level of accuracy there. We're talking about Sterling's 8 from 11, 9 from 13 is in a similar area. So that's looking very good as well. And generally, his XG is higher than Mane's is in away matches. There's a really interesting angle on Mane actually. I mean, I mentioned on Scoutcast on Tuesday thinking of selling Mane in order to get to Sterling. But yeah, as you say, the headed efforts is quite an interesting one. Perhaps the only thing to say is that, Liverpool, generally speaking, not really the type of team to play balls into the box in that way. They like to play on the floor a little bit. Maybe that plays into it because, as I say, the XG for Mane in away matches is a lot lower. So I mean, there's that to consider as well. But sometimes it's when you have 2 teams matching up like this, it's hard to always replicate that in, say, the last 4 away matches, which a lot of Liverpool's last 4 away matches, they're not going to be. They won't have met a team set up quite the way that Newcastle are going to, and they haven't really been playing people who are susceptible to headers. So sometimes you have to make situational calls, don't you, about one match in isolation, based off a different stat rather than individual form. The only other thing about Salah before we move on to the next section is that he now has attacking returns in his last 5 game weeks in a row, which I believe is his longest stretch without a blank for the entire season. So if we're talking about reliability of a player, it's strange, isn't it? Because we look at Salah and say, his best patch of form was, say, November, December, January, February, that sort of time. But yeah, as I said, his longest run of games without a blank before the current spell of 5 matches in a row was just 3 matches. So there's that to consider as well. Obviously, there was only 1 double-figure haul in there. Most of those hauls have been sort of 5, 6, 7 because it's been an assist here, maybe a goal there without some bonus. So it's not quite as explosive as we perhaps maybe think that like maybe a Sterling or Aguero could be at home. But it's just worth considering on the reliability angle that he has been posting some good scores. So if people are worried then, because I think that's perhaps the thing that we see as the caveat for both the Man City and Liverpool fixtures is the fixture. Let's talk about Chelsea now, because a lot of people have even been considering triple captaining Hazard for this game against Watford. Watford have at times this year been whipping boys that we've looked at as a team that have conceded lots of shots, lots of big chances. Against the big teams, they especially seem to be in that category. What can you tell us about the way Watford are looking ahead of this Chelsea game?
They're a strange team, really, aren't they? Because they aren't Huddersfield or Cardiff or a team like that. They're not struggling. They're comfortably mid-table. They're going to finish top half. But they're on the longest run without a clean sheet in the Premier League, and that includes teams like Huddersfield and Fulham, Cardiff. The teams in the bottom 3. They've chopped and changed recently. I think Gracia's been looking for. So he's played this 4-4-2 narrow formation all season. And just recently, he's kind of had a wobble. I think the last 3 game weeks, he's experimented either from the start of the game or during the game with a 3-5-2. So I think he's trying to address the defensive problems that he's got. And we saw how Ben Foster's been a generally reliable pair of hands this season, but he's had a bit of a wobble of late. So that Aubameyang goal, which yes, he deserves credit for being that quick to charge him down. But we saw again last weekend against Wolves, came charging out to deal with that Neves cross, missed it completely. So yeah, they are defensively speaking vulnerable. Really, they're there for the taking. And Chelsea's much better on home soil than they are away from home. Hazard as well. I think Hazard's recent run of returns away from home is dreadful. I'm not sure if he scored since it might have been that Watford game actually in December. But obviously on home, different kettle of fish. Double-digit hauls against Brighton and West Ham, 32-33. Assist against Burnley in 35. He had a double-digit haul against Wolves as well. Remember that last-minute goal? He scored from distance. Watford, most big chances conceded this calendar year. So that's 2019. So they've been consistently bad. Third worst for shots in the box in that time. Third worst for shots on target. So in each of their big 6 away games this season, so they've played 5 of the top 6 so far, they've conceded 2 or more in all of them. So I can see why people are looking at Hazard, especially with his form. I think the only caveat, and we'll come on to this in a second, is the fact that Chelsea's playing in the Europa League tonight and then again next Thursday. So we wonder about team selection. We wonder about what priority the league takes at the moment. Yes, Chelsea need to secure a top 4 place. They haven't done that just yet, but they're still in the driving seat. I suppose in a way, Chelsea's got Leicester in the last game of the season away, which is a tough one. So I think Sarri might look towards getting this one won, and then I think that should be it. That probably should be enough, I think, to see them over the line. Not entirely sure. I think Arsenal might still have a say in that, but yeah, I don't think there'll be wholesale rotation. And would he even consider dropping Hazard for this? I'm not sure. But based on opposition statistics anyway, Watford's are there for the taking, and how much of a mindset they've got towards looking towards the FA Cup final as well. Whether Gracia is thinking about that already, then that remains to be seen. That might have more of an effect in game week 38. But yeah, is there anything standing out from a Chelsea perspective, especially Hazard, I'm guessing, because I don't think there'll be many other options within that. I think Higuain's long since deserted popularity, hasn't he? He's
Yep. I think he's the new Morata, right? He's the Morata 2.0, the lump up front they've paid loads of money for who can't score. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Hazard really is the only one who looks particularly exciting. But, one thing that we'd sort of said over recent weeks, and you've noticed a few times, is that Hazard at home against poor teams had sort of struggled, and, his XG in home matches wasn't particularly great, because obviously that fantastic goal he scored against Wolves is brilliant, but, he's not going to do that every week. So, there is that to consider. But out of premium sort of players that we're all considering for this particular game week, Hazard does have, has been showing in the last 4 matches, the ability to offer a spread of points. When you look at Sterling and Aguero, largely that's goal threat. When you look at Salah, again, largely that's goal threat. Mane as well. They're not players that, historically Salah had offered a lot of creativity, but that seems to have dipped now, and especially with the new midfield roles at Liverpool, a lot of the creativity is coming from elsewhere, and players like Firmino and that sort of thing. Whereas Hazard just is the complete and utter talisman and hub of this team, which is one reason why Chelsea fans should be quite worried if he leaves this summer, because it's all going through him. He's joint 4th best for his 6 shots on target in the last 4 matches. He's got an accuracy of 54%, which is nice and healthy, possibly sustainable as well. But also, he's created 11 chances as well, which is considerably higher than any of the sort of premium captaincy options that we're looking at for this. It's higher than Salah, higher than Sterling, higher than Aguero. Basically, the top for last 4 matches chance created is De Bruyne, but obviously, of course, we're not expecting him to play. So Hazard very much at the top end of that. So he is offering the possibility of goals and assists against a team that, as you've mentioned, defensively not that great. As you say, the worst for big chances conceded in the whole of the calendar year. So I mean, I think Hazard is probably the best alternative captain option that we have this week, because he's a differential sort of at the top end of managers, because he was very much a fall guy in a lot of the wildcard squads as people look to get in lots of Spurs players, maybe double up on some Liverpool players, sort out your Man Cities, your Liverpools and your Spurs with the popular premium midfielders, roughly 4 or 5 game weeks ago, and we were really considering this. And in that time, Hazard has, quietly been, scoring big, and especially at home as well. So, yeah, I think Hazard looks a great option this week. And, so last week, when we were sort of considering triple captaincy for that Liverpool match, there was a lot of people who were thinking, well, if everybody's going to triple captain a Liverpool player, triple captaining a Liverpool player as well, even if compared to the captaincy, it's a case of the triple captaincy versus just a normal captaincy is only going to get you that one additional player effectively. But triple captaining Hazard, who probably stands an equal chance of matching, your 13, 14, 15 points you'd like to see, and what we saw from the Liverpool players last week, could easily do that this week, but isn't going to be the most popular captain candidate. So, this is the sort of player, I think, that if you're in the position where you want to make up some ground towards the end of the season, maybe you're chasing a mini league lead and you're second or third or something, the people at the top end are largely going to be captaining Man City players. The position I'm in a lot of leagues, I'm going to go City because I want to go safe. But if you're chasing people like that, they might not even have Hazard. I'm probably not going to have Hazard because I can't fit him in. So putting a triple captaincy on him, if you've still got that, well, even just putting the captaincy on it could make a huge, huge difference. And I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if Hazard was, the top goal scoring player this game week. So definitely an exciting looking option and easily the best of the differential options, I think. There's a few other sort of differential options that we can sort of consider before we finish, and we'll start with Wolves because Jimenez, I think, is fourth in the captain poll right now. A lot of people looking at the fact that he's playing Fulham, but of course, 3 clean sheets in the last 4 matches. I'm really intrigued here, Neale, to find out how much of an impact Scott Parker's had, and perhaps maybe whether or not he's been fortunate to keep those clean sheets, or are they well deserved?
I would say a little bit of both, which is the stock pundit answer, isn't it? But yeah, so 3 clean sheets in the last 4. This isn't obviously not the Fulham team of 2 or 3 months ago when they were shipping goals for fun. They've been statistically terrible all season. So not just conceding goals, but underlying stats as well, big chances, shots in the box, things like that. So yeah, I've had a look at the last 4 matches, as you say, 3 clean sheets within that. Definitely deserved to win against Everton. Caught Everton on a rare off day. Everton didn't really create much at all. I would say in the last 2, so the wins over Bournemouth and Cardiff, which were 1-0 in both cases, Rico has been called in action a lot. So we've seen Fulham rank 4th worst for big chances conceded over this 4-game stretch. They are 3rd worst for shots on target conceded. They are 4th worst for shots in the box conceded. So their underlying stats haven't improved that much in spite of these clean sheets. And I think what's happened is Rico's suddenly got into good form after months of being very, very suspect looking. We saw, was it the Liverpool game, wasn't it, when Milner scored that penalty when Rico made that hash of a shot and then felled, it must have been Salah. He's been doing that sort of regularly past couple of months, but he's looked very solid past couple of games. I've seen, certainly saw the Cardiff game live last weekend, and made a string of excellent stops. Late on, it should be said, Cardiff didn't really offer much in the way of threat until they were 1-0 down, and then they really went for it. But he stood up to everything they could offer. But plenty of encouragement there, I think, in the underlying stats for Wolves fans. I was personally burned by Jimenez captaincy in double game week 35. So I might shy clear on that just based on past experiences. But yeah, not as solid as 3 clean sheets in a row would suggest. What I will say before we pass back to you on Wolves players, we had a quote this morning. Now, this isn't from Santo's presser. That'll be tomorrow. But I saw a link this morning on the Express and Star, which is the local paper in Wolverhampton. And he was talking about giving minutes to fringe players. He was mostly talking about Will Norris, who's the 3rd keeper, really, behind Rupert Chicho and John Ruddy. But he said it would be nice to give minutes to all the players before the end of the season. What I think he was talking about was make sure every member of the first team squad has had a taste of first team football this season. Now, most of them have. I think it's just Norris that hasn't. But we could see a rotation perhaps. This would be the week to do it. I don't think he would rotate on the last game of the season if they're away at Liverpool and a title race is on the line. I don't think he'd risk the wrath of either the Premier League or Man City by doing that. So he might look at giving some fringe players a run out this weekend, home to Fulham. Now we'll monitor what he says tomorrow. He might just have been talking about that one position in goal, but something to consider anyway. But in terms of the pros of the Wolves players, have you got anything that stands out? Jimenez or Jota, who do you think's the leading candidate?
Well, it's tricky. Jimenez, I think, has been a bit deceptive in recent weeks. He's But Wolves generally have, I think, they're always a lot better against the big teams than they are against the bad teams. And I suppose, Fulham are putting some form together, then maybe they're no longer the type of team that, Wolves typically struggle against. I don't know. But, Jimenez hasn't scored at home for a while. I think it's game week 28 or 9 when they beat Cardiff was the last time Jimenez scored at home. Obviously, he got those 2 assists. I think it was against Man United. But obviously, that was for shots that were kind of like either off target or one of them, the ball kind of came off him and then someone scored an own goal. So you can't really rely on that sort of thing to happen again. But Jimenez isn't doing too badly for XG in the last 4 home matches. It's 2.2, which is the best of any Wolves player in the last 4 home matches. But in terms of just raw numbers, it's not actually. If you're the type of manager that likes your big players to be shooting lots, shooting in the box quite a lot, it's not quite what you'd want really. Jota is looking the better in that department with 10 shots, and all of those have been in the box, 4 on target. Jota generally been the more reliable at home recently. As I said, Jimenez without a goal at home in a fair few weeks now. So yeah, while Jimenez is looking quite popular in the captain poll, has been seen as a differential option quite a lot this season. It tends to be that he becomes a slightly more popular differential option when they play a weaker team, but then that traditionally is when they're not at their best. So really, you should be considering the likes of Jota and Jimenez when they're playing, your Man Uniteds and your Liverpools and your Chelseas. So it's you have to flip the FDR on its head really with them. So before we go, we should just talk about Man United, and we haven't really discussed them a great deal on here. And that's with good reason, because they're not in particularly good form. When you look at the captain poll as well, their most popular asset is Pogba, 4.1% in the poll currently, which puts him in 6th place. There's sort of doubts over the fitness of Rashford, rumours about an injury to Lukaku. And he was saying on Tuesday, maybe even Sanchez is going to get a go, which for me would make them arguably worse, because he just does not look like the type of player you want starting a game. Huddersfield, obviously, are shipping goals, but if you're pinning down someone to do it, it's hard to pick one out. I mean, I think Pogba probably the best one, but obviously, we haven't really talked about them a great deal in this particular, we haven't really researched them a massive deal, because really, there isn't really anyone who stands out from open play, and that's the bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I wrote this in the digest yesterday, that you're rolling the dice on the off chance Man United get a penalty, really, in the last 2 games of the season, which could happen. I've found out that Huddersfield and Cardiff, who Man United play on the last game of the season, have conceded 15 penalties in total this season. Man United's been awarded the most of the entire 20 Premier League clubs. So that bodes well in that regard. But yeah, in terms of pinning a name down, as you say, Pogba probably the pick of the bunch at the moment until we get clarification on Rashford and Lukaku. But his, as you say, his threat from open play has nosedived, hasn't it, really, since that Fulham game. I think that 3-0, and then the subsequent game against PSG. So his rate of shots in the box, big chances, things like that have halved. So he's, and I think he's averaging, was it 3.3 points per game the last 10 games, something like that. So he's not, based on his own merits, he wouldn't be someone you'd ordinarily consider. It's just the fact that it's Huddersfield, who've lost all 11 matches against the Big Six this season, conceded 35 in the process. That's even more than Cardiff have. Again, last 6, most goals conceded, Huddersfield, most big chances conceded, shots in the box, shots on target, that's Huddersfield. So can understand why you just back whoever's playing against Huddersfield. It's just pinning down which Man United asset you want for that game, really.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. With the other bigger matches, we've got players we can easily pick out who are in better form. So I think that's really what it comes down to, isn't it? That brings us to the end of our captaincy discussion for Game Week 37. We'll be back tomorrow for some team news around sort of 2:30, 3 o'clock, depending on when the press conference is full. So keep an eye on our YouTube channel and Twitter for more details on that. It'll be myself and Neale again, and Neale will have sat through all of the press conferences, so he'll have square eyes by that point. So we'll see you tomorrow for the team news.
Yep, see you then. Bye bye.